Hey, welcome to my video. Today I'm gonna be doing a dragon head painting. This is actually one of the heads that I drew in my tutorial video, and I liked it so much that I screenshotted the video and wanted to actually paint it. So I start this video a little bit after what I actually started. So I kind of just cleaned up the sketch a little bit and then painted white over the dragon because it's going to be a white dragon. And then I added a layer in multiply mode, which is this brown color that you see. That's the multiply layer, and I am going through and erasing the paint on that layer to reveal the light underneath. And so this is my cheaty way of doing light, and I do this for pretty much all of my paintings. I'll fill the whole entire thing with a color in the multiply mode and then go in and erase where I want the light to be. Some people find it easier to paint in shadows, so paint the multiply color in for their shadows. I just have always found it easier to paint in the light. I can imagine where the light's gonna hit, and that's where I paint. I think it's kind of backwards compared to what most people do, but it's just how my brain works. I have to think about where's the light hitting, not where's the light not hitting, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does. This is just the way I do it. And it's really easy. It's also super helpful if you're painting something that isn't just one color. So a lot of the dragons that I do have a ton of colors because dragons are really fun to play with colors. And going through and painting a light color for all of the colors would be an absolute nightmare. So I just paint one color, usually a dark purple or a light purple, over the whole thing in multiply mode and then erase, and that's how I do the lighting. And then of course I go and I fix things and I add details, but that's where I start, and it's super helpful. You can actually also, I knew this a while ago but then have totally forgotten, you can also paint white onto the multiply layer, and that's the same thing as erasing in multiply mode. I don't know why, it just works. So you might see me alternating between white and this light gray shadow color. Yeah. And then whenever I want to go back and paint the shadows, I erased too much and I don't want to hit the undo button 50 times, you can see the color I pick is just the color that I have set in the multiply layer, if that makes sense. Yeah. And you might see this in some of my speed paints. I'll paint a dot somewhere and label it the shadow because that's the color that I'm using in the multiply layer. I can't just color pick because that would be too easy. So I just kind of leave it in the corner for me to go get if I accidentally move off of that color, or if I have to go back to painting on that layer after I've moved on from shadows. But yeah, that's what I do. I'm kind of biased, but I think it's really easy to do shadows this way, and if you want to do shadows in a really easy way, there you go, there's a tip. I also almost entirely forgot to mention, but this is how I use references. I have an image that I took a screenshot of Pinterest, and it's of a fossa, which is a creature from Madagascar. I don't know. Technically, there were fossas in the movie Madagascar, if anyone has ever seen that movie. I mean, it's pretty old now, and it makes me feel old to talk about it, but it was a movie when I was a kid. But yeah, but they pronounced it Fusa, which is weird. But then I actually went to go volunteer at a zoo in my hometown, and they had fossas, and they called them fossas, and it's spelled like Fossa, which would be fossa. So I don't know what the heck the people at DreamWorks or whatever were thinking, but it's totally pronounced fossa. Anyway, that's an aside. But yeah, so I have this picture and I'm using the split screen functionality of the iPad to have the image on my left, and then on the right I have my dragon, and it's super helpful. Like, I'm really bad at using references. I'm lazy, so I kind of just try stuff until it works, which is fine, but references are usually really helpful, but I really had to use a reference on this one. Painting in a lineless style is actually pretty new for me. I've been doing it, I don't know, like 3 or 4 times, and I've learned that it comes out a lot better if I have a reference for lighting. Like, I know generally where light is gonna hit just based off of experience with dragon faces and experience with physics in real life. I don't know, but it was super helpful to have an actual, like, nicely lit reference here right next to me where I can see it. Super helpful. And yeah, for people it's a lot easier because you can get all manner of lighting scenarios if you're looking up references for a portrait of a human. But for dragons, it's a bit more difficult. If anyone's got a dragon at home, they don't like to take nice photographs of it. So I'm forced to look for animal portraits or animal photography, nature photography, and then trying to find one with good lighting is kind of hard. If anyone wants to know what to search for, usually dogs people take nice portraits of dogs that have interesting lighting, or cats. But this one's a fossa. I don't know. It just showed up on my Pinterest and I loved it, and so now I use it all the time. As you can probably tell, I'm not copying the reference exactly, partially because I'm not that great at realism. I don't know. I should practice. But anyway, also because I actually intended on this being my new profile picture, which by the time this video goes up, it will be my new profile picture. And I wanted less of a strong lighting, if that makes sense. So the picture on the left, it has very strong lighting, which is super nice for figuring out how light works on forms. But I want people to be able to see more than half of this dragon's face if it's gonna be the profile picture. So I wanted to soften the lighting a bit, have bounce light from below. I'm using these terms like I know what they mean. I just end up doing what I think looks good, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that could totally be bounce light. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Which, is fine. Lots of people will probably know better, but that's how I do it, and I think it looks good. And I should probably learn more about lighting, but, I'm learning. I'm trying, okay? We're all just trying, and I think it looks good. So it actually, in the end, turns out pretty nice. Goes through a few ugly stages, which you'll see in this video. But yeah, here actually is exactly what I mean by I'm changing the lighting. So in the reference, there's not a lot of light coming up under the jaw, like under the cheekbone of the fossa, but I'm actually adding in this soft light from below, which again I'm imagining is light bouncing off of the dragon's shoulder up to its chin, or her chin. I mean, I nicknamed this drawing Ash because that's my name and it's going to be my profile picture. And she's a white dragon, which is the color of ash, so I thought it was funny. um, Maybe it's not funny to anyone else, but I like it, so there it is. But yeah, so I'm going in and adding light under the chin because I want people to be able to see what the bottom jaw looks like, what the forms look like. This is actually a pretty good representation of what my art process is like. I actually do a lot of experimentation. Like, I could find a reference that has bounce light, but again, I'm kind of lazy and I was going with the flow. I was in the groove, so I just started trying stuff, and that's a lot of my process. Actually, a lot of how I learned what I like in my own drawings is just stuff that I tried, and it's not gonna work every time, but sometimes, you know, it just works. You make a line and you're like, ooh, I like it, and you keep it and you kind of learn that way. Which when I started drawing, I never expected that that would be such a big part of the art process, the experimentation of it. I thought people who do art just know what they're doing all the time, but at least for me, half the time I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying stuff that I think will look good, and the stuff that looks good I keep, and the stuff that looks bad I redo or find a reference. And you figure it out. There's a lot of just trying stuff, which is super cool. It reminds me of science. I mean, as in experimentation, not as in the scientific method and bacteria and stuff like that. But also, now that I think of it, there is a lot of physics in art as well, because you have to think about how light works all the time and how colors interact with light and stuff like that. So I guess there's a lot of physics in drawing. I mean, perspective, is that physics? I don't know. I did take physics, I swear. And I passed. I should also mention that. I passed physics in college. I promise. Anyway, my main point was that there's a lot of experimentation in art, at least the way I do it. You don't know what you're doing all the time. And actually, at least for me, when I don't know what I'm doing, that's when I have the most fun. That's when I'm engaged and I'm thinking about stuff, and it's super awesome. If I'm drawing something that I've drawn like a million times before, sometimes it's cool, like if it's an interesting character. But yeah, at least for me, the most fun is when I'm doing stuff that is challenging me and I've never done it before. Like doing a new pose, or like I'm doing here, trying out a new art style, the painterly style. Oh, I just remembered. Here is where I'm kind of trying to mess with layers, because I think, at least for me, I did something to the eraser version of this brush where it's not as smooth, or like the pressure sensitivity is different. I don't know, maybe I'm just crazy, but I like the way this brush paints more than the way it erases, so I was trying to figure out a way to paint the light instead of erasing it, because I had forgotten that you can just paint white on the multiply layer, and that's the same thing, but you're using the painting brush, not the eraser. So yeah, there's a don't repeat my mistakes, people. White is the same thing as erasing on the multiply layer. Jeez. There should be a user manual. Okay, who am I kidding? None of us would actually read it. At least I wouldn't. I just like to go in and do stuff. But yes, this is me trying to figure out what the heck to do. I just think it's kind of funny. I can't believe I forgot a basic quality of this multiply mode that I use all the time. But yeah, no, I just totally forgot, and I have forgotten for like a year. And I just remembered like yesterday, and like last night in the middle of the night, I remembered you can paint white. You don't have to erase. And yeah, so then the next painting I did, I painted white and it totally worked. Go figure. I think that was one of the main effects of me taking a break from art for a while. It was during COVID and all of us were having a tough time, but I just stopped doing art for a while, especially digital art, and I forgot a lot of the cool things that you can do. Weirdly enough, my abilities did get better because I was still looking at art. I was still seeing paintings and able to process what I liked and what I didn't like and how lighting worked in those paintings, like subconsciously, and remembering how they looked and stuff. I just wasn't painting or drawing a lot. I think, at least if anyone is feeling like they're kind of burnt out, that's helpful. You can still get better at art when you're not doing art, as long as you're using your eyes, looking at how light works in the world, or looking at art that you like. You know, you are getting better just by seeing stuff and being an observer. You don't have to do art to get better. I think doing art might make you get better faster, but I took a break for about like a year, maybe more than a year, and my art had gotten a lot better in that time. I think I've improved more rapidly now that I am drawing almost every day and putting out a piece for Instagram for people to see. So I try. I try harder using Instagram and social media that way. But yeah, if you're burnt out and you need a break, don't worry. You will still be good when you come back. You might even be better. You probably will be. Anyway, here finally is where I move away from just working on the face and I start doing the horns. Something that's not on the reference. And yeah, so the rest of this dragon is all pretty much improvised. I've tried this effect where one part of the spike is light and then the other half of the spike I go in with like a very soft addition of light to the bottom of it. You'll see what I mean. I've done that before and I know that I like it, so that's why I did it here. Again, I don't know why it looks good. I think it has something to do with bounce light, but I'm not too sure exactly what bounce light 100% is. Don't tell anyone. But yeah, so it looks good, so I just kept doing it. Yeah, and then all of the neck is kind of improv as well. Yeah. But anyway, I think this effect looks cool, so I just keep doing it. One thing that I've kind of picked up on recently, and I don't know if I'll think this forever, but adding light sources to your paintings, as in more than one light source, always looks really cool. I mean, it can get confusing to draw that way because you have to juggle multiple light sources in your head, and I definitely don't do it perfectly. I'm just thinking about adding what I think is bounce light, or looking at pieces that other artists have done where you can tell there are multiple light sources, and they have this extra level of complexity that at least my eye just likes. So I try that in my painting as well. But yeah, so now I'm finally moving on to the neck. I'm kind of fleshing out the muscle groups. Again, dragons aren't, around in real life. So you kind of just have to imagine what their necks look like, what the muscular looks like. I go off of a combination of like dogs and horses, and I think about how a snake looks, kind of, and it's just kind of an amalgamation of all these different species. You can also think about the general shape of the form and just try to think in terms of like a squiggly cylinder, I guess. So the cylinder can represent a group of muscles. I don't know. Again, a lot of what I do is I just try to figure out what looks good. So if you think of a cylinder having light cast on it, the center is going to be in light and the edges kind of fade. So that's sort of the effect of what I'm trying to do, where each muscle group that I envision is basically like a cylinder. And then I just kind of go for it. I just realized that I've been recording this voiceover for about 20 minutes. We're like 21 minutes into the footage, and I kind of just have the face, and there's really a lot to go. I think it's super interesting how this is a new style for me, and I just checked the tracked time on this painting, and it was 2 hours and 20 minutes. I have full bodies that took me like 3 hours of a full dragon with lines. That's like including sketch lines, colors, not just one color, like color patterns plus shading. That took me like 3 hours. And that really goes to show, like, when you know how to do something in terms of art, you end up getting a lot faster, and then when you're trying something new, it's slow. It just surprised me. I didn't think that this headshot took me that long, but there you go. And that was, right, I had already had the sketch because I made it using my tutorial video and I really liked it. So then I just added the picture to this canvas and went to town. Yeah, I don't know. It's so cool learning something new though. I think I really like this painterly style. It's challenging in the right way, and I think it looks really cool. I've been really into artists like Cynic's design, and obviously Ross Draws is super popular, and I don't know, just his older stuff is a little bit more painterly, and I absolutely love it. It's so beautiful, and I kind of want to see if I can do that with dragons. I think that would be so cool. So I think that's my ultimate goal, is have an expressive painterly dragon style. Of course, I would want to keep my lined style, especially for potentially commission work, because that's a lot faster for me and simpler, if that makes sense. So for a commission, it would still be beautiful because they would have a line layer and colors, flat colors and shading, if when they get the PSD, and so it would be super cool for them still. But it also, for me, would take less time, meaning my dollars per hour would be higher a little bit. I don't know, just some interesting art style and art practice thoughts. I do want to be someone with multiple styles, I think. I think I can do it. I think it would be fun. So I definitely had to retry the shape on that main muscle group a few times, but now I'm kind of moving on to the sub muscle groups. So I imagine a main muscle group on the side of the neck, and then I guess there's one on the front of the neck that's You know, the ones on the side are more like your traps, and then the one in the front is like kind of like where the throat is, and then right under the jaw is like exactly where the throat is. Like on a human, that's where like your Adam's apple would be, like your trachea and stuff. Throwing out these anatomy stuff like it's like it actually means something in terms of a dragon, but it helps me. I think actually knowing about human muscle anatomy really helps with the dragon. I don't know. I think certainly knowing about animal muscle anatomy would help a lot, but I know more about human muscle anatomy just from like classes and stuff. And it actually does help to think of like the traps and the deltoids and stuff like that. So, yeah. I guess also along the same vein, if you do bodybuilding, like that would be good for art cuz like so I went through a phase of really liking like weightlifting and bodybuilding, and I followed all these bodybuilding channels. It was really fun and definitely helped with my fitness, but you know, these bro science dudes know so much about muscles and like what each muscle is, and I wonder if they would be good at art just cuz they know all the muscles. I don't know. Just a thought. I do have to say, I didn't know what a rear delt was until I started following bodybuilders. So maybe there's something in there. I know what a rear delt is, and I could probably draw it. So for some reason, I have no idea why, but that kind of reminded me, you know how I mentioned that I took a break from art and posting art online for a while? Well, recently I've mostly been doing digital art. It's just easier. The iPad is smaller than my sketchbook, and I almost always have the iPad with me. Like, even if I go to work, sometimes there's downtime where I can potentially draw. But my sketchbook is kind of too big to bring and do stuff like that. But I also, at work, I have a notepad where sometimes I'll doodle on it. And the other day, I was drawing, like, I was actually drawing a plan for my piece for a Draw This in Your Style that I posted a little bit ago. And I kept trying to zoom in to the piece of paper because it was a really small notepad. And I was so embarrassed. There was my coworker sitting next to me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just zoomed in on a piece of paper. And as soon as I told him that, I immediately did it again. It's involuntary at this point. I guess if you take a break from doing traditional art, you kind of forget how traditional art works. Like, you can't zoom, you can't hit undo, you can't add a new layer. This is why I respect traditional artists so much. I know we start out that way, but it is absolutely so much harder than digital. I would like to add that here, that little edge of light on the back of the neck is almost certainly from a second light source. That's what I meant by like extra light sources look cool. And I think it could be considered rim light, but I also kind of consider it some sort of bounce light because I imagine that light is bouncing off of the dragon's back onto the back of her neck because the dragon is white, and so actually a lot of light will get reflected. And I also think that adding bounce light especially makes your dragon look more shiny and metallic, because if you think about it, metallic surfaces are really reflective. So there would be a lot of bounce light and stuff like that. So there you go. Brain. Physics, potentially. Artists, you know, you gotta be kind of smart to be an artist, I swear. So here I'm in kind of a sort of cleanup stage, but not the final cleanup stage, where I wanted to talk to you about some stuff that I do to make the end result look good. So I wanted to take this brief span of time to ask if people like these like chatty paint with me's where I paint a dragon and I just chat about stuff. I know I really like listening to Chatty Paint With Me videos. I listen to them all the time while I'm drawing. And I thought, I don't know, maybe I could join in on that. I like chatting about this stuff. I think it helps me think about my own process, and potentially it'll help other people think about their process. So I guess if you like it, let me know with a comment or a like, or I don't know. I'll probably end up making these videos anyway, just because I find that I like making them. Actually, it's really fun. So you might see more of these on my channel, or I don't know. The channel's right now is kind of a place to experiment and have fun with dragons and have tutorials and speed paints and real-time videos. I'm very much still figuring out what I want to do, what type of videos I want to make, but I am really enjoying it, and I find that I do really enjoy making these chatty paint with me videos. It just kind of feels like talking to an art friend about art stuff, and it's nice. Even if no one actually ends up watching any of these videos, I don't know, it feels like chatting with a friend for me, at least. At least for me personally, I do have a few friends in real life who do art, but not very many, and none of them do specifically dragon art or creature art, so it's kind of cool to get those thoughts out of my head and out to potentially other people to hear them. I am aware that I get rambly. I'm actually pretty rambly in real life, and I definitely have been rambling in this video, like about that Foss's story. I don't know. I personally enjoy rambly paint with me videos, but if some people don't, that's okay. If you just want the art tips, that's awesome. Let me know in the comments. If you like rambling, let me know also. And if you like this type of video at all, let me know. Here's where I'm gonna speed things up a bit, not quite as fast as like a speed painting, but kind of fast, because most of this is just adjustments. And what I will show you coming up soon is how I use the curves function in Procreate to adjust the lighting and overall look of a painting. This is actually a really powerful tool. I've found it can make the painting just look a lot better. And I definitely don't claim to know very much about the curves at all. I play around and experiment and try to find out what looks good, but in general, gamma has at least something to do with the lighting, maybe the saturation of stuff, but if I want to make a painting lighter or darker overall, that's what I use. And then there are colors, which I found you can make your painting overall more blue, overall more red, or just the shadows more blue and the rest of it not, and stuff like that. Just mess around with it. Oh, and if you make a really curvy line, like up, down on the gamma, I think, you end up with this cool effect where your art looks kind of like an oil slick. I don't have it in this. I didn't try it for this dragon, but I've tried it before and it looks super weird and psychedelic and really cool. So if you want to try that, I recommend it. It's super fun. And if you don't like it, you hit one undo and there you go. You're done. Oh yeah, and also here, I'm really trying to get an iris in this dragon eye. And it just doesn't work. I actually, I end up erasing it. So I feel like I know how to draw eyes for my more lined style, my more like simple style, but I'm not too sure about how to paint dragon eyes. So that's something that I am figuring out for myself, and when I do figure it out, I'll definitely tell you guys what the heck how I figured it out. But yeah, I think it has something to do with the size of the iris, like because the dragon's face is very much like a cat's or a dog's face or a horse's. And if you've noticed, those animals have very large irises that cover almost their entire eye, whereas humans, we have a small iris and then a lot of our eye is white. But, you know, a cat, their eye is pretty much all iris. So I think it has something to do with that. I'll experiment and I'll let you know what I find. But yeah, so I think I'm just gonna go into some speed paint music and finish out the video. Hope you guys enjoy how this comes out.